Welcome back to the Red Ones Go Fast, old Big Mek here, and in this episode, we are looking at the first of the 5 holiday battle forces, the Krieg Siege Platoon. So, let's get into it. That's right, welcome y'all. You have stumbled upon the Red Ones Go Fast. Now, this is a Warhammer 40K focused channel, heavily into orcs, but we cover all things 40K because here at this channel, we focus on the hobbying aspect. There's a zillion channels out there that cover competitive play and like super high-end painting. We are all about collecting, buying, building, and kit bashing your Warhammer armies, especially that kit bashing part, and we're all about saving teeth or money if you're not an orc around here. And so every year when Games Workshop has announced their holiday battle forces, old Big Mek here combs through it and goes at it a little bit differently than everybody else. You see, most channels have the holiday battle forces wrong. They look at the battle force from the perspective of a player that already plays that army, and they kind of rate it solely on a dollar value or a points value ratio, and that is all wrong. You see, old Big Mek here has been around this hobby long enough, since 2nd edition, to understand that holiday battle forces are specifically designed for new players. Now, not necessarily new to Warhammer 40K itself, but new to that army. That is the whole idea. So when we look at the battle forces, what we are doing is looking at it from the perspective of somebody that just received that battle force as a gift. Now, whether or not that gift came from yourself, the Red Gobbo, or somebody else is of no consequence. The point of the matter is you have already determined that you are getting this kit, or you are actively holding it in your hand while watching this video, and you're wondering, what now? And that's what we're here to answer. So yeah, the premise is simple. We go over the holiday battle force itself, and then we talk about the ways to expand it from there so that you know what to do with your brand new army. And hey, by the way, welcome to Warhammer 40K. Now, I don't want to say I'm exhaustive as far as like every little thing you can do, but I do like to really dive into these armies and look at them from multiple angles to give you options based on the things that you are going to like the most out of the box. So when you build your army, when you start playing with it, you decide where to go from here. You're going to get solid advice no matter which direction that is. Now, a couple of caveats. If you've watched the older ones, they were, very relevant in the years that they were out. If you're trying to watch, a holiday battle force from 2023 or 2024 right now in 2025, it's not going to make a lick of sense because those boxes are no longer out. Unless you get lucky and find one at your friendly local game store for the retail price or less, there's no point in buying them. Basically, some people like to buy up these boxes and hold on to them and hope to get a higher value for them. There's nothing special in these boxes. They are not FOMO, fear of missing out. They don't have special edition things in them. They are a discount bundle. It is one of the few ways Games Workshop can actually discount their kits legally in order to bring some savings to you, the end consumer, because they have a set price list with all of their vendors for the individual kits. So, unless it's a battle force, a combat patrol, or a special box, that price generally doesn't change. There have been very, very, very few exceptions. Usually it's when a box is about to go out of production or something of that nature. But yes, 99.9% of the time, your Warhammer 40K unit, that price is the price, and the only way it's going is up. So, these boxes are to get a discount. So if you do find an old one, unless, or like you're watching this and it's not the holidays of 2025, don't go search this box out. Like I said, unless you've stumbled upon it and it is retail price or less, it's not worth it, okay? So, all that out of the way, we are specifically looking this episode at the Krieg Siege Platoon. Now, I will be doing an episode every single day this week, so you will actually see all of the other armies, all 5 of them in a row. I don't cover the Age of Sigmar ones yet, because I don't play Age of Sigmar. I don't know it in depth enough to really give good advice in the way I give these. That being said, they're probably excellent buys. I'm sure there's a channel doing something similar, and if not, make sure you hit me up in the comments below and really push me, and maybe we'll add that to our repertoire. But for now, Death Korps of Krieg. All right, so like I said, first of all, this is assuming you are brand new to either 40K or this faction. Death Korps of Krieg are one of the 3 main regiments currently available for the Astra Militarum, otherwise known as the Imperial Guard. The main poster boys of these guys, Cadians. Cadians are very generic space human, for lack of a better term, and they comprise the main Astra Militarum combat patrol, which we'll talk about here in a second. There's also Catachan Jungle Fighters, which are like space Vietnam guys. They don't kind of exist right now. We're not going to talk about them at all. They don't even have a discount box. And then there's Death Korps of Krieg. Death Korps of Krieg were originally released as an alternative way of painting the Armageddon Steel Legion, which was a mechanized regiment that came out in 3rd edition Warhammer 40K for the War on Armageddon kind of whole series. There was a special edition codex that came out and a bunch of models and stuff like that. There was an alternative way to build them with a different style of gas mask face and a different paint job. Those guys became the Death Korps of Krieg. Now the Death Korps of Krieg have been fully released and fleshed out as a plastic-only army. They did previously exist for the last decade and a half from Forge World, which was Games Workshop's super high-end resin line. If you find some Forge World stuff, it's very, very cool. Expect to pay a ton of money for it. It is highly collectible. It is also really difficult to work with. It is resin. All of the dust residue, everything is super toxic. It could be very brittle, all that kind of stuff. So for the purposes of this, we are only looking at Death Korps of Krieg, and we are only looking at new modern plastic kits. Again, the whole point of the idea is you are holding this platoon in your hands. It's not out yet, otherwise I would hold it here for you to see. But you are holding this platoon in your hands. You are going to walk into your friendly local game store or your Games Workshop store, and you need to know what to buy next. So everything I'm going to tell you are things that are currently actively on sale and easy to find. There are older discount boxes that could potentially be found. In fact, last year's version of this episode, there were a couple of army boxes that Games Workshop had so overproduced that we were actually able to like put them into our video and be like, hey, you should really go buy this box because there's like 300 of them available on eBay. They're super easy to come by. Right now in 2025, that is not the case. All of the discount boxes that have come out this year have sold out fairly quickly. You can find one or two around, but they tend to be retail or higher, and there's just not enough of them for me to really add it in good faith to this. So again, all of the kits we're going to talk about are regular production kits that you could buy at any friendly local game store or Warhammer store that stocks the full range, or buy online. So let's get into it. So in your Death Korps of Krieg Siege Platoon box, Battleforce, this is what you're going to be getting. You can see here on the bottom right, there is a Krieg Command Squad, which is a 5-man squad plus the Lord Commissar. They are boxed together, so you will always get those together. You also have 20 Death Korps of Krieg Troopers. Those are your basic troops. There are 10 each in a squad. You'll also notice in between those two squads, kind of in the top left, there are 5 that are a little different looking with a little bomby guy. That is your engineering team. There are 5 of those as well, plus the 2 artillery teams, which are the 2 giant siege cannon looking things that are kind of dioramas. Quick aside, if you're finding the camera work a little off, I completely shattered my wrist last month. I've had 2 surgeries already, and trying to do things one-handed and edit with one hand and all that kind of stuff is a little tricky. So my production values are not quite up to what you would normally see here. If you'd like to support the channel, you could totally do so by becoming a YouTube member or a Patreon. They're both the same price, $5 whole a month. You get early access to videos like this, and it greatly helps me out buying adaptive equipment and things like that to keep the channel going. Okay, enough of that. Back onto that siege platoon. So that siege platoon, as you just saw, it contains 6 units. Now, the Death Korps of Krieg, the 20 guys, rules change, so just be aware of that. But as of this filming, you can run the squad as 20 men or 10 men. Normally, you don't want to run more than 10 guys in a squad, because in modern 40K, even if you're doing a casual game, the battlefield is kind of so crowded with terrain and things like that that it can be hard to maneuver that many guys around. So you would run them in 2 squads of 10. I also want to say, again, this is assuming that you are brand new to 40K or this faction. The regular Death Korps of Krieg troopers, the ones that you get 20 of in this set, they are 2 identical sets of 10 Those sets of 10 can be built multiple ways because that kit was originally released as a kill team. Kill Team is a squad-based skirmish version of Warhammer 40K that relies on specialists. So basically you built those 10 guys and you can build them all sorts of wacky. There's medics, there's snipers, there's destruction specialists with explosives, there are guys with like heavier guns, there are guys with close combat stuff. You can build those options into your Death Korps of Krieg squads as of right now, and that's okay. So go for the rule of cool, build them how you want them, but do understand that there are multiple ways to build these guys and kit them out with different war gear, and that's going to change kind of how they operate on the battlefield. Again, here at Dread Ones Go Faster, we are all about the rule of cool. Build them however you think looks cool. If you want all lasguns only, by all means do it. If you want all the special weapons, do it. If you want some sort of mix, absolutely your prerogative. But that does mean you're going to end up, when you're done building this Battleforce, you are going to have a ton of extra parts, which are great for kit bashing, things like that, as time goes on. So kind of keep that in mind. But again, 6 units. Your Lord Commissar is included in your command squad. So that is all one unit when you are building your roster. Then the engineering team, those 5 guys are by themselves. And then, like I said, 2 squads of the 10 Krieg guys on their own, the troopers, and then those 2 artillery teams. The artillery teams also, they can be built either 3 or 4 different ways with the guns. It's relatively easy to magnetize or otherwise mess with the kit so that you can switch the guns out on the carriage. That way you don't have to like glue it in and make a choice. I would highly recommend doing that because especially as you get started in an army, it's really hard to know which weapons are good, which ones aren't good. Plus, like I said, rules do change. Expect something that is really hot right now to probably not be so hot when the rules change because they like to go for parity. So they tend to nerf things that are too good and buff things that are too bad. Again, though, you can never go wrong with the rule of cool. If there's one that you like better than all the others, by all means, build it that way. Because if you like it, you're going to play it more often than if you don't like it. But, like I said, that being said, you should be able to build all either 3 or 4 different guns in the artillery team pretty easily. So I would highly recommend doing that. So these 6 units, it is a starter army. You do have a character in that command squad that you can make your warlord. And you do have a couple of battle line units in those squads of guys. Now, you don't necessarily have to have battle line units anymore, but if you actually play the missions that come in Warhammer 40K 10th and a half edition or in any of the mission decks like Pariah Nexus or something like that, oftentimes the actual missions can only be done by battle line or are greatly improved chances if you have battle line units. So having a couple of battle line units is definitely a great idea. And then you must have a warlord, which again, you can take in your Lord Commissar as part of your command squad. Those 6 units will give you, again, as of this recording, which is November of 2025, 710 points. Now, points-wise for all these boxes, this is probably the worst deal of them all, and that is part and parcel of the Imperial Guard. Again, these are regular humans. They're not superhumans. They're not mutants. They're not, enhanced in any way, shape, or form. These are regular bog standard humans, so they are low points cost each. You're also building, out of these figures, you're building 30... Again, basic humans, they're going to have different war gear and stuff and different poses, but you are building essentially 30 of the same guy, and then 2 of those artillery things. And then there's a couple little, again, like the little engineering blow-up mine thing, and there's like a little servo skull. And then the Commissars, 31. You're building 31 essentially identical guys, plus the 2 heavy weapons platforms. So it's a little monotonous, building, collecting, painting wise compared to the other armies. That being said, if you like the trenchcoat look, if you like the idea of regular bog standard humans surviving the horrors of the year 40,000, these guys are wicked cool. In fact, I personally have a Death Korps of Krieg army, and I am planning on getting this platoon personally. So all these things that I'm saying, I am going to be doing. I am putting my money where my mouth is. I will be following along with these. In fact, if you want to see that, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, because in 2026, I will be doing New Year, New Army, and that army is going to be my Death Korps of Krieg. So you can build along with me. We can paint our fun little trench dudes together and have a blast. Okay, so now that you've got this box, you've built all 6 units, you've got 710 points, you're going, what next, Big Mek? That's what I'm here for. You've been blabbering on for 15 minutes. Give me the goods. Okay, first of all, with all of these, we're going to start with the Combat Patrol. Now, what is Combat Patrol? Again, I'm assuming you are either new to 40K entirely or new to the faction. A Combat Patrol is the other discount box. It is also a way of playing Warhammer 40K by itself. The actual Combat Patrol game by itself is honestly not great. I wouldn't recommend trying to play it. I don't recommend it as a standalone game at this point. Again, November of 2025. But the Combat Patrol boxes are an absolute bargain, because again, outside of these holiday battle forces, this is the only regular way to pick up discounted miniatures. Again, Games Workshop has a set standardized price on all of their minis. They do not let their corporate stores or your friendly local game stores discount them more than a certain amount. And that means that if they want to encourage sales, they can't just have a sale on the models. What they have to do is put a bunch of models together in a discount box and sell that. And that's how they do it. Now, Death Korps of Krieg have recently gotten their own Combat Patrol. In fact, again, as of this recording, they just came out. They're just hitting store shelves about a week or two ago. They are readily available as of this filming. How available they'll be come December, I'm not sure, because we're being told that this particular Combat Patrol is not going to stay on sale forever. Most of the Combat Patrols do. They are on sale for the entire edition until that army gets its new codex in the next edition. But that being said, they have done some pseudo-limited, as in they make one run of them and then they don't restock them. Death Korps of Krieg is one of those. So if you're watching this and you're like, yes, I really want this, get on the ball right away. Get that Combat Patrol before it goes off sale. And again, don't pay more than retail for it. The whole point is that it's a discount box. If it's more than retail, you're better off just picking up the units individually. Okay, so what is in the Combat Patrol? All right, here we have the Combat Patrol. You will see the same Lord Commissar and 5-man command squad right there in the front. That was in your Battleforce. And hey, look, there's 10 of the same Death Korps of Krieg. So there are 2 repeats. There are, however, 2 new things. You'll see these 3 heavy weapon squads in the middle and these 5 mounted horsey guys in the back. Those are the Death Riders. So 2 different units than the Battleforce. Now, normally I would kind of like take points off a little for having repeats, especially in your troops and your headquarters units, your characters, your commands. That being said, Death Korps of Krieg doesn't have any other options. A regular Death Korps of Krieg squad is their only choice battle line by themselves. They don't have any other options unless you go into other regiments, which we're not doing. Same thing with the command squad. They don't have any other options as far as command squad goes outside of a special character, which again we'll get into. All of the other options are from other regiments. Also, most armies, if you are going to be even reasonably competitive in Warhammer 40K, most armies want a repeat on those basic battle line units and a couple of whatever your basic commander is. They tend to be the best value for points in the army, and as far as on the battlefield goes, the best rolls. So having 2 of those command squads with Lord Commissars and 3 squads, 30 full Death Korps of Krieg, is not a bad thing. In fact, you could double up on either one of these boxes as part of your army and be just fine. I think because you could have a maximum of 3 of the command squad and 6 of the Death Korps of Krieg, the battle lines. Everything outside of battle line, you can only have 3. Named characters, you can only have 1. But yeah, so you could take 3 of those command squads. So if you wanted to buy 2 combat patrols, for example, that would be my pick. 2 combat patrols and 1 battle force. you're going to be just fine. Again, it might be a little bit repetitive that you're building 3 of the same unit in that command squad, and between 3 and 6 of the regular squads. But again, these kits are multi-part kits. You can build the guys in different ways. You can equip them with different weapons. So if you want one squad, built with a bunch of close combat stuff, you can do that. If you want one squad built for like anti-infantry, you can do that. You want another squad built for anti-tank, you can do that. And so it's going to be a lot of fun to equip your squads with different loadouts so that you've got some variety both on the tabletop and for your own sanity. But yeah, so the Combat Patrol, again, same Lord Commissar with Command Squad, same Death Korps of Krieg. Where you get differently is, instead of the engineering team and the 2 artillery teams, you get the Death Riders, which are wicked cool. They are Death Korps of Krieg on mutant horse thingies that are super duper rad. Now, the Astra Militarum does have the Attilan Rough Riders, which is another mounted unit on horse, which is also very cool. But it's awesome that Krieg have their own, because the Attillans are the ones, they're kind of like their own regiment, but that's the only thing they do, are the Rough Riders. So when you take them in other Guard armies, it can be fun, but also like it mixes up what you're doing. If you like the trenchcoat guys, having trenchcoat guys on the horses is fun. And the fact that they are like death horses, that they are bred on the death world that is Krieg, and they have gas masks too, where they have like these mutant hooves, are really wicked cool. You also get the heavy weapon squads. The heavy weapon squads are different than the artillery squads. The artillery squads are on basically a pie plate. They are absolutely huge. They are like miniature set pieces or dioramas almost. Like, that is how detailed and awesome and large they are. The artillery teams are much smaller. They're on a smaller base size. There's kind of like just 2 Krieg guys on each one, and they are designed that one unit is 3 heavy weapons teams, and generally you would equip all 3 of them the same way. They are very useful, they are very cool, and they help pin down your line. So if you think about like making a trench warfare line, you've got 3 squads of regular dudes, you've got a squad of this heavy weapons, and then you've got 2 of these bigger siege artillery weapons. You got the engineers out running past the enemy lines, breaking stuff up. You got a couple of command squads running everything, and then when it's time to charge in, you've got those Rough Riders. It makes for a really cool looking army. That Combat Patrol is 4 more units. It's 265 points. You put the 2 together, and you are looking at 710 points. I'm realizing now I probably misspoke earlier when I said that the Siege Platoon was 710 points. It's not. It's 445 points. My mistake. Again, I'm kind of on a lot of medications for this. The brain and the mouth aren't really getting along. So the Siege Platoon, 445 points, 6 units. Combat Patrol, 265 points, 4 units. You put them together, 710 points, 10 units. You are well on your way to an army. You're about halfway to a 1,500 point army, which is not necessarily competitive. 2,000 points tends to be what most tournaments are these days, or at least really big level tournaments. However, most pickup games, friendly games, games like your friendly local game store, even I'm seeing like smaller tournaments, they're going to the 1,500 point area because it just makes the game more manageable. So I like to say that 1,500 points is kind of the start of your army. Once you've gotten to 1,500 points, you have a full-fledged army. So 710 points, you are well on your way there. And again, if you're looking to double up on anything, I would recommend doubling up on that Combat Patrol. That would give you 975 points out the door. You'd end up with 3 command squads, 4 full Death Korps of Krieg squads. You'd have the 1 engineering team, the 2 artillery teams, 2 squads of 5 Death Riders, and 2 sets of 3 heavy weapons teams. I think that is a fantastic army, a fantastic way to spend 1,000 points. There are certain upgrades you can do, especially to your warlord, that will take up that last 25 points. Again, assuming the points don't change in between when I record this and when you play. Definitely make sure you check the app and the codex and whatnot for the latest points. But yeah, that is a fantastic army. 2 combat patrols and a siege platoon is excellent on the tabletop. That being said, I fully acknowledge that that is not the most exciting thing in the world to build and paint, even if you are super duper into gas mask, trench coat, trench warfare kind of guys. Again, even if you just buy the 1 combat patrol, you're looking at 30 identical dudes, plus 10 identical command dudes, plus 5 engineering dudes, plus 2 commissars. And then even though you're building these kind of various heavy weapons, they are manned by the same guys. You're not really getting to build anything different. There's no tanks, there's no walkers, there's no epic characters. The 5 horses are about the most exciting thing you get. So, knowing that and needing to make the army bigger, where do you go from there? First of all, I do want to acknowledge there was a Death Korps of Krieg Army launch box that came out a few years ago that had Lord Marshal Dreer, 10 of the Death Riders, the combat engineers, and 1 artillery team in it. That box, as of this recording, is extremely hard to find, very expensive, and doesn't make a whole lot of sense. In fact, the only thing in there that you could really add to our current army that we're talking about with the Battleforce and Combat Patrol is Lord Marshal Dreer. He is the head of the Death Korps of Krieg, and he rides a horse. He's 100 points. He's really awesome. You can buy that unit on its own super easily. And in fact, I would totally recommend doing that. That is a great place to go after having the Battle Force and the Combat Patrol, because he can lead that squad of the Death Riders, and he looks really cool, and he's something different than all of the regular dudes that we were just talking about. That being said, if you already own that box, it's 375 points and 5 units. You can add that to the Battle Force and the Combat Patrol. You'd have 1,085 points. And 15 units, which would be pretty darn cool. Then you wouldn't need to double up on a second combat patrol or anything like that. So just acknowledging that that's out there. But, okay, ignoring that, we've got a battle force. We've got 1 to 2 combat patrols, depending on what we want. Where do we go from there? Well, one way you can go is the Astra Militarum combat patrol. Now, the old one was all Acadian. This is the new one. The new one has 1 Acadian command squad, which you see down here, the guys with the knee pads that are kind of lame, along with 10 Kasserkin, which are the dudes with better armor there in the middle. And then at the top, you see 10 of the Attilan Rough Riders that we were just talking about. This is 295 points and 4 units. Now, in the beginning, we said that we were only going to be looking at the Death Korps of Krieg Regiment. Why would I recommend this? Well, Kasserkin are their own thing. They are not from any one particular regiment. They are like elite stormtroopers for the Imperium. They are, useful, legal, and, totally work with every regiment. That being said, they are not in trench coats, so it is something different. Even though it is 10 more guys to build, it is 10 guys that don't look the same as all the guys you already have. And they fulfill a very, very different battlefield role. This is another one of those kits like the basic Death Korps of Krieg that was originally released as a kill team, so there's a zillion options in the kit, which is a ton of fun. There's also the 10 Attilan Rough Riders. And again, I know we're going to have between 5 and 10 of the Death Korps Riders. These riders are different. They've got these lances, these great big giant long lances with explosive grenades at the end. They fulfill a different battlefield role, and their models are very different than the Death Korps of Krieg Riders. I think having both on the board would be a lot of fun to both build, paint, and look at. That being said, I fully understand that this battle force is a whole lot of meh. That Acadian command squad totally doesn't fit in with your army. There's also nothing for them to lead because there's no other Acadians, and you don't want to buy Acadians anyway. I would even personally recommend just selling that squad after you buy the combat patrol. But if you're just going to sell one of the units that you're getting at a discount, why buy it at all in the first place? And that is totally, totally fair. There is a different combat patrol that you can pick up, however, that does sort of work. And that is this, the Combat Patrol for Imperial Agents. You see, you can always run Imperial Agents as an ally to your Imperial Guard force. This particular battle force gives you a Ministorum Priest, an Eversor Assassin, who's this really awesome looking dude here with the skull, 6 agents, and 20 vigilance for a very, very different looking force to your Death Korps of Krieg. So if you like the Death Korps of Krieg, but you don't necessarily want to just keep doing the same thing, and you don't want to expand into other regiments, you could look this way. Having Imperial agents in your army, having allies, is something that is a very cool thing that the Astra Militarum can do. And so if you like the idea of random Inquisitors and Arbites and Assassins and stuff running around with your army, it could be a good pickup. That being said, it is 20 identical guys to paint, which again were originally released as kill teams, so they got all sorts of build loadouts, but still, it's 20 more dudes, and then all of these kind of special characters that are small. So it is just a whole lot of more infantry. So it's still not my personal recommendation. It's not the direction I'm going to go. It's just something that you should be aware of. Outside of the Imperial agents themselves, you also have the ability to add singular units of other Imperial factions. So you could take a unit of Grey Knights or Sisters of Battle, the Adeptus Sororitas. The Death Watch kill team would be a whole lot of fun if you wanted to add some power, armor, muscle to your army. You could even do Imperial Knights if you like big, stompy robots. In fact, the big stompy robots would probably go really, really well with all of your trench warfare dudes. But yeah, those are all different directions you can go to add things into this army to make it work on the battlefield and work as a collection. That being said, as an Imperial Agents collector, I already have an Imperial Agents army. They're really difficult. They can be a standalone army on their own, or they can ally with somebody else. They're very situational. Basically, the only real reason I recommend playing Imperial Agents at all is if you are somebody that likes painting different things all the time. Agents are fun because normally you wouldn't do the same squad twice. You would put in a little bit of absolutely everything, and your whole army together, or your whole collection together, is going to be kind of bonkers. If you are that kind of person, if you love painting different stuff, if you love a collection that is a motley crew, Agents is for you. If you're getting into Death Korps of Krieg because you like trench warfare guys and trench coats and gas masks, Imperial Agents isn't going to do it, and that is totally okay. I do have one other big box recommendation, though. And that is thanks to Horus Heresy, otherwise known as 30K, which is a game that stands alone on its own that is set 10,000 years before the current Warhammer 40K timeline. This is the Solar Auxilia Combat Force. So basically the combat patrol for the pre-Imperial Guard for that game. You can see that it has a good old-fashioned Leman Russ battle tank in it. And in fact, one that looks super duper at home with the Death Korps of Krieg aesthetic. Same thing with their Sentinels. You have two of these Sentinels that are very cool looking. There are 20 dudes as well, or I'm sorry, 25. 2 squads of 10 plus a 5-man command section. However, they are very different looking than any current Imperial Guard regiment or the Death Korps of Krieg. Now, if you're familiar with Warhammer 40K, forces, you will recognize that these guys actually kind of look a lot like Tempestus Scions, and that is actually my recommendation. So you can pick up this particular combat force. Again, it's kind of their version of combat patrol. Use the Leman Russ as a Leman Russ, use the Sentinels as Death Korps of Krieg guys, and then you can use the 20 Las rifles and the 5 command squad as Tempestus Scions. You can take 2 squads of 10 Scions and a Scion command squad. These guys look and are equipped basically identical to the Scions in 40K, but the way that they look different looks very Death Korps of Krieg. So you could kind of imagine that this is the uniform that the Scions would use on Krieg or any trench warfare situation. If you are into that kind of aesthetic, I think Horus Heresy is where it's at. The Solar Auxilia, especially their vehicles, just ooze that kind of World War I-esque coolness that Death Korps of Krieg have. So if you were to do, the Battleforce platoon and the combat patrol for Krieg, plus add this Solar Auxiliary in, you'd have 1,390 points. Grab your Lord Marshal Dreer that we talked about earlier. You're at 1,490. That is a 1,500 point army. That is my personal recommendation. That is probably the direction I'm going to go, because I really like the way the Horus Heresy vehicles look with the Death Korps of Krieg. I think they nail the aesthetic way more than any of the other vehicles. Plus, they tend to have, gas mask head options for the riders and the drivers and stuff like that. Even if they aren't the same kind of gas masks, it still works if you're into that whole trench vibe. So that's 3 boxes plus 1 character, super easy to buy, super easy to pick up, and it gives you some different stuff to build. Again, even though you're building 25 more dudes, these 25 dudes look very different than the 36 that you started with, and you're finally getting yourself a tank, because tanks are super duper important to Imperial Guard, to the point where to go from 1,500 points to 2,000 points, I only recommend tanks. Don't buy anything else but tanks. In fact, no matter what boxes you choose outside of the Battleforce and Combat Patrol, I would pretty much only buy tanks rather than individual units. They just doesn't make sense to buy any more infantry. If you do want more infantry, just buy more, again, of the same Combat Patrol or something like that. You want tanks. Tanks are where you're going to both get points and you're going to get stuff that can actually do damage on the battlefield reliably. Again, personally, I'm going to stick to the Horus Heresy tanks. They have a Basilisk that you can use as the Basilisk in Warhammer 40K that, again, looks very Death Korps of Krieg, plus their Leman Rusk. You buy 2 Basilisks and a Leman Rusk to go with this Solar Auxilia Combat Force. You're looking at, it was like 1,995 points. Like, it is so beautifully on the button. You've got 2 main battle tanks, you've got 2, self-propelled artilleries, plus you've got the 2 big siege artilleries, the heavy weapons team, all this great gunline stuff you could put at the back of your lines and just pound the enemy with munitions. You've got a ton of guys up in your trenches that have different battlefield roles. The Tempesta Scions act very differently on the battlefield than the Death Korps of Krieg troopers do. It gives you a lot of flexibility, and I think it gives you a collection that looks really cool. And here is that Basilisk, in case you were wondering what it looks like. You can see that the detailing that the Horus Heresy vehicles have on all of this armor plating is what gives them that vibe that the Death Korps of Krieg have that I've been talking about. Now, if you are not personally into the the Horus Heresy stuff, if you don't like the idea of using those guys as Scions, that's totally cool. Again, you can pick up the Astra Militarum Combat Patrol, you can start adding Cadians into your force, or you could just straight up buy the regular Imperial Guard vehicles. The Rogel Dorn especially is fantastic, to the point where I even already have one for my Death Korps of Krieg army, even though this doesn't match the aesthetic of those Horus Heresy tanks. I think it's cool enough in its own right to add to your collection. There's definitely a ton of super awesome Imperial Guard vehicles available. Pick and choose to your heart's desire, but that is where I would go spend my money outside of the Battleforce and the basic Combat Patrol. Is just go buy tanks. Lots and lots of tanks. Plus, that gives you something very, very different to build and paint and collect compared to just more and more and more of the same basic infantry. Unless, again, that's your thing. If that's your thing, by all means, buy into that infantry. All right, that's going to do it for this one. I know it was a long one. We had to set the premise up at the beginning. I will probably not take as much time setting up that premise for all of the other videos, but then again, I probably might, because a lot of these videos are where we get our first-time viewers from, because again, they have gotten this Battleforce as a gift either for themselves or from somebody else, and they want to know where to go next. I'm going to be doing all 5 Battle Forces over these 5 days. Expect tomorrow to be the Chaos Space Marines, and then on from there, we will again cover all 5 in depth like we did here on both what is in the box, what's in the Combat Patrol, and how well that works for you, anything you should double up on, and then your different options on where to go from there. I am personally very excited for the Death Korps of Krieg one. I know most of the other channels have kind of put it down for being not a lot of points and not a lot of dollar value. I think the coolness value is very high. And I think that if you are into that kind of aesthetic, if you are into that kind of army, if you are looking forward to an Astra Militarum force that is not the same old Cadian thing, that these are very exciting boxes. And I love that it's different units than what's in the Combat Patrol. I think that they work together so nicely, and that's not something that Games Workshop has always gotten right. So, if you are a new player, welcome to the Death Korps of Krieg. I hope you really, really enjoy them as much as I do, and I will hopefully see you around here on the channel, especially as we go into 2026 for my New Year, New Army, as we build my Death Korps of Krieg up, and hopefully you are doing yours as well. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for watching. If you are into Warhammer 40K and this is not particularly your army, or this isn't the Battle Force you got, that's okay. Check back the other days for the other 4 Battle Forces, and on into the future as old Big Mek covers all of the various discount boxes Games Workshop does and gives you expert advice on how to save money and make really cool things for your hobby collection. All right, that's going to do it for this one. Until next time, walk on!